What's cracking, everybody? New video. Today's video is gonna be a trip down memory lane. Those of you guys that have been on this channel for a while, excuse me, I just got done eating. You guys know that I've done videos on the 2 times that I escaped from camp. This video is gonna be when I got caught the second time in '89, and I went to YA after I was arrested this time. So I was out exactly 2 months, right? This video is kind of inspired by just thinking about the whole Rodney King thing, and you know, those of you that remember Rodney King, those of you that don't, Google it. If you're too young to remember, Google it. And you know, Rodney King got beat down by the LAPD, and it created a big thing, and you know, I remember being in YA when it happened, right? And I remember everybody saying, man, he got the standard issue. The thing is that he got the standard issue on camera. That was the game changer. So this is my Rodney King moment. And I really believe that the authorities, because I got to be careful how I word things because of YouTube. I really believe the authorities were trying to remove me from Earth that night. So let's get to it. So like I said, I had been on the run. I had escaped from camp. I had been on the run for exactly 2 months, right? And I was in the streets, like really in the street. I couldn't go to the house. The cops they were looking for me everywhere. Every day it seemed like I was running from the police. They had an attempted murder warrant out for me, a bunch of burglaries. I was boosting. If you came through my neighborhood bumping a system and you weren't from the neighborhood or related to somebody in the neighborhood, I was jacking your system that night. That's how I was getting my money. And I was drinking a lot. I was, you know, smoking a gang of weed, doing coke now and then. I was just really like, you know, I knew I was going to go to jail. So I was, you know, and there were times, you know, where like I rightfully, and it's embarrassing to say, but it's the reality. There were like 3 different bushes in the neighborhood that I had like a knife in there, a bottle, and a sleeping bag. And I'd be all messed up, man. And the homies be like, hey, let's go over here. And I'd be walking with them, and I'd be like, one of them bushes would be right there, and I'd be like, homie, I'm gonna jump in this bush right now. And my other homeboy, Dopey, shout out to my homeboy Dopey, Anthony. He was on the run with me. So wherever I went, he went. He'd be like, all right, let's go. And there was my homeboy Pancho. What's up, Pancho? Him and his brother watch the channel. I know his brother Rob watches it more. But they had a Caprice on Orange Avenue. I used to sleep in the backseat. I mean, I was really like a homeless dude, just banging and running around, criming it, right? So that's a setup. That's a look into who I was at the time, 15 years old. So I remember the movie Harlem Nights had just came out, right? I didn't care about that movie. My daughter's mom, at the time I was still with her, and my daughter wasn't born yet. That happened after I got out of YA, but she made a big deal of me going out with her that night. And I was like, well, if the homies will come, I'll go. And she was like, why do you always have to have the homies? And why can't you just go out with me, this and that? And that's the truth. That's coward stuff. When gang members, we're supposed to be the hardest dudes on the planet, but we got to have our homeboys with us because some might jump off, right? So we got in a big old fight, and I'm like, all right, so I'm going to go with you. And there's something trippy about this night, but I'm not going to add it to this story because it just gets too, it's just too much. There's already enough going on. So I go to the movies, and it's just me and her, right? And while I'm in the movies, I'm in Harlem Nights. I had told some of the homies, hey, if you want to show up, you know, I'll be over here watching this movie. Well, The movie theater was on State Street. Anybody that knows Santa Barbara knows back then, this is the 80s, this is 89. That's where everybody used to cruise at, right? And the east side would be there, the west side. You would have people from Chiques, from Ventura, whoever was there that night, right? Everybody would be there. Everybody was picking up all the beautiful, girls that were there, all the beautiful women. And I was inside, and at one point, two of my homeboys came in. My homeboy Benny, little boxer, him and another homie, they come in and they were looking for me. And they told me, hey, just so you know, the east side is deep outside right now. So when you come out, be careful. They go, we're going to go out there. We're going to go hunting right now. And I was like, all right. I wanted to go with them. My ex was like, no, this is what I'm talking about. This. So I kicked it. Well, the movie ended. I come downstairs and my homeboy Pancho, the one I had just mentioned, I used to sleep in the backseat of his Caprice. Him and a truckload of homies are cruising up and down State Street looking for me because the east side's out deep that night, right? I come out and I see them. Hey, what's happening? I wind up jumping in their truck. Boom, there's a big party in the neighborhood. We go to the party. Actually, somebody tried to come into the party. And so an incident happened there, and the cops ran up, and so it's one of those nights, it's the 80s, gang banging. It's that neighborhood life, and I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking, and I didn't realize how much I had drank, right? But all I knew is after the authorities came and they busted up the party. Everybody running in different directions, knocking fences down. You know how it gets. A bunch of people hid in the house. And then once we all regrouped and met back over there, the majority of us, it was somebody was saying, let's go to the park. Hey, let's go to the park and party. The thing was, back then, there was like 4 or 5 parks that my neighborhood considered theirs. The main one was Westside Park, the real name being Bonnet Park, right? So anytime I used to hear the park, I always, the Westside Park. So I got dropped off at Westside Park, me and my road dog, Muggsy. The homegirls dropped us off and they were like, hey, there's nobody here. And we're like, I was stubborn. Nah, they're coming. They didn't come. They went to a different park. Muggsy lived on the other side of the bridge, right? So he's like, hey, homie, let's just go to my pad. I said, I'm not going to your pad, homie. The homies are going to come. And, we're arguing. So anyways, I told him, I'll walk you over the bridge. I walked him over the bridge. And he's like, are you going to be good? And I said, I'm going to be good, homies. I'm going to go to the homie's pad, Perro. My homeboy Perro, rest in peace. I used to stay at his pad. He lived right next to the park and the apartments right there. So he walks off. That was my first blackout of the night. I came to, and I was in these apartments, and 2 dudes that we had just jumped out of my clique, out of the Tiny Locos, they were brothers, Tiny and Gangster. We just jumped them out. For some reason, like I said, I had blacked out. When I came back out of it, I was trying to break into the storage thing of the apartments. Why? I don't know. I don't think anything is in that place. But I was in that criminal mindset, and like I said, I had blacked out, so I was trying to boost something. Then once I realized what I was doing, I was like, what the hell? So I was like, okay, I need to get to Perros. It was just right there, man. So I go through the parking lot. As I'm going through the parking lot, I saw Tiny and Gangster's car. The ones we had just jumped out of the Tiny Locals. So I was like, you know what? F those guys. So I broke into their car and I stole their system. Next to their car was their uncle's car. F him too. I broke into his car. I got something in my head where I just decided I was just going to break into everyone's car. And I wasn't finessing it. I was breaking windows loud. And I was stacking up stereos in the parking lot. And I remember the lights came on in the apartments next door. They came on and somebody came to the window and looked down. Then I started banging on them. West Side, this and that. I started banging on them. So they turned the light off and I was like, that's right. I was nuts. I was an angry kid, man. 15 years old. Well, I didn't put it together because I was so drunk. And just, I'll cut to it. I wound up having alcohol poisoning. I was so drunk. But anyways, it didn't compute in my head where when those lights came on, I need to get the hell out of there and get chuperros, sleep it off. You know, tomorrow's another day. No, I kept breaking into cars and stealing systems. I know, I'm not proud of it. That's just the kid I was back then. And I probably had, I think it was 7 or 8 systems piled up in the middle of the parking lot. Because I'm moving a car, bring it over here. I wanted to centralize everything I was doing. I turned towards the park to look at some other cars, and something caught my eye, and I stopped and looked. And it was a cop. And he's bringing his flashlight up, and he turns it on. And he goes, hey, what are you doing? And I noticed his hand was down, and he had a canine. He's holding a canine by the leash, right? So I start walking backwards, and he's like, what are you doing? And then he turned the flashlight, and he saw the stereos, right? I looked at him, I looked at the stereos, and I started grabbing stereos and picking them up and just smashing them. Because at least I had enough mind left to know I'm going to try to turn these burglaries into vandalism. If I leave them all in you know, good shape, they're going to say they were burglaries, right? Anyway, so I start smashing the stereos, kicking them. And I see the cop reach down to let his canine go. When I saw that, listen, people ain't gonna believe this, but some of my homeboys remember the story. I remember getting out in 93. This is 89. I got out in 93 when I was fighting my case, my hot one in the county. I remember my homeboy Pancho, actually. He's like, hey, tell me that story again, when the Judas tried to, you know, take you out. This was the story. When I saw that the authority reached down to unhook his dog, I broke. I ran through those apartments, and there's a bunch of stairs. I had like 5 stairs to hit the sidewalk. You turn left. When I drove through my neighborhood and I showed you the Curly Bridge, I was on that street. When I showed you, I said I used to stay in those apartments. That's the apartments that I'm talking about. So I start running, and I could hear the canine's toenails. And I'm just waiting for him to bite into my back. I took off down those stairs. I hit a left. Now, like I told you, there's the Curly Bridge right there, right? Never, everybody from the west side knew, never run from the cops and go up the bridge. Because they're going to tell another unit to get on the other side, and you're going to wind up having to jump off of it. And that could kill you. So I'm running. I hit the railroad tracks. I made it to the dead end, the end of the block, the railroad tracks. Boom. Once I hit the railroad tracks, there's a fence there that goes to the 101, but it doesn't have poles in it. So when you hit the fence, it goes like this. Man, I hit that fence and I swung forward. I swung back and I saw the dog, and I went forward again and I just kicked my legs up. I landed on the other side of the fence. That dog almost had me by this much. Now I'm spitting on the dog. I'm waiting for the cop to come. The cop comes, tries to jump the fence. I kick the cop off the fence. This sounds like a Wes Watson story, but I swear to God it's true. I kicked the cop off the fence, immediately spun around and ran into the 101 and almost got hit by a cop car that was coming and responding. Made it across to the center divider. I'm standing on the center divider on the 101 freeway under the Curly Bridge, under the Anna Pomu Street Bridge, and I'm yelling my neighborhood out. I'm disrespecting the cops, telling them they'll never catch me, and then I jumped down, ran to the wall on the other side, and there's a chain link fence, and there's a wall, and there's a gap about this big. My bony ass slid right through it, slid into the riverbed, and I knew exactly where I needed to be. I'm going to run under the bridge to the right, There's a metal ladder. Go up that ladder. There's a hole in the fence. I'm going to go into the hole in the fence, run to Castillo Street, turn left. I'm at my homeboy's pad. They're not going to catch me. Right? Well, reality set in. I slid in between the fence and the wall, slid down, and that was blackout number 2. My brain shut off. Again, I didn't know until later I had alcohol poisoning. I had drank so much. So I'm running. When I finally wake up, my brain turns back on. I'm almost at the Mitchell Terrena Bridge, which is way past where I need to be. But I don't recognize it at first, right? I'm looking, I'm like, where in the hell am I? I look back and I was like, oh, damn, I'm way too far. Then I'm like, okay, I'll go to my homegirl's pad, Ana Nena. I'm going to go over there. They'll hide me out. That was another one of my little stash spots. So I'm jogging. I don't hear nothing behind me. I'm like, I still got to wait. I'm jogging. And I'm looking at the bridge. Something's not right, but my brain can't catch it. I'm looking at the bridge. Then I start walking slow. And I'm like, what's wrong with the bridge? The problem with the bridge is you can't park on that bridge. And there were cars parked all the way across it. And as soon as I realized you can't park there, I knew what it was. It was the Huras. You know how they have that light on the side of their car? They all had them facing down. And they clicked on at the same time. And the lights are doing this. Like, you know when you see prison escape movies? That's what they were doing. Then I could hear the cops were actually on the top of the, because our riverbed was like this, right? They were up above me on both sides. So I knew I was done, right? I said, all right. They finally hit me with the light. There he is, there he is. Now, you guys got to keep in mind, this foot chase has been going on for about 45 minutes. The reason why I know this is because the cops at Juvenile Hall, when they took me in and I could finally talk, because it's some time you went crazy. They told me, man, that was crazy. They were listening on the scanner in Juvenile Hall. I was their excitement that night. They couldn't believe that chase. Well, I assumed the position. Those of you from the 80s and maybe they still, and the 90s, and maybe they still do it. I immediately got on my knees, put my hands behind my head like this, interlocked my ankles, because I know the routine, and I waited. I was like, you got me. Don't trip. I give up. You got me. Cop came, boom, cuffed my right hand, cuffed my left hand, and then grabbed me. I had hair back then. Grabbed me by my hair and slammed my face into the concrete riverbed. Once he did that, him and every officer that was surrounding me pulled their batons out and had their day. I was a piñata that day. In more ways than one, I was a piñata. They were hitting me and hitting me. And the thing was, I was so drunk, I didn't feel anything. And it's weird because I remembered a book from Juvenile Hall called White Fang. And in it, some part in the book, they talk about if you don't feel the pain, it means your body's in shock. And that's when you could die, right? So I remember thinking, damn, am I in shock? Because I could hear everything hitting me from head to the bottom of my feet. And I was like, am I going to die from this? So keep it all the way real. I looked around and I noticed it was all white authorities, right? I'm in the riverbed on the west side at like 2:30 in the morning. I said, they're going to do me in. What did I start doing? I started yelling, help, call the cops. They're killing me. I'm telling the community, call the cops. Because the cops were doing it. Right? Some lights turned on. My grandma used to live in the apartments right there. Some lights started turning on. And I remember clearly one cop said, shut him up. Somebody grabbed me by my hair, pulled my head back. And I think they were trying to hit me in the mouth. They hit me here. I have a scar across my chin right here. They hit me here. I have a scar on my hand right here. I got the tattoo over. You can't see. And I got a scar on my knee from that night. They knocked me out. I don't know how long I was out. I woke up. And they were still at it. They were still at it. But they had their hands, some of them had their hands on their knees, breathing hard. That's how tired they were from whooping on a 15-year-old kid that weighed about 135 pounds. I woke up and saw that we're still doing it. I started again. Call the cops. That time people had been waiting. Lights came on and people started coming out and they were like, what's going on down there? I have 2 incidents with firemen. I know not all firemen are bad, but I have 2 bad incidents. This was the first one. The fire truck comes. They throw down a rope. Remember, I'm handcuffed like this. They tie me up through my handcuffs. They pull me up. Remember, the thing goes like this, right? Real steep though. Not like LA's is more like this. Ours is real steep. They pull me like halfway up and then they would let go of the rope. And I think they were trying to get me to bust my head open. They were laughing. Pulling me up, letting me go. Pulling me up, letting me go. They only stopped when an ambulance showed up. And the ambulance saw me. I mean, my face was busted, my hand, my leg. And I remember the ambulance dude was like, put him in the back. And they were telling him, get out of here. Put him in the back. Get out of here. The dude said, this doesn't look right. Got in his ambulance. And they were holding me like this, right at the edge. And as soon as he left, they let me go and drop me. Boom. And luckily, I landed right on the edge. Didn't fall. That could have been the end. But anyways, this night is one of the longest nights of my life. I tell you. Oh, I wound up needing stitches. That's when they took me to the hospital. They beat me up at the hospital. They beat me up like 4 more times at the substation. You know, it was a different era. There's going to be a lot of people in the comments that are going to remember the 80s and the 90s and remember how the cops were doing us. That's why I say Rodney King got the standard issue, but luckily for him, it was on camera. I don't want to keep going. The story is already really long, and I don't even know what their YouTube will let me do with it. But again, I was a 15-year-old kid, about 130 pounds. I was running from the authorities. And they beat me like I stole stuff personally from their house all night long. There's no future in the streets. There's no fun, right? It's just a bunch of heartache and ass whippings. So everybody stay safe, stay smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them. I'm out.